Hola chicos, this is Miss Schaefer y hoy vamos a hablar de gramática de capítulo 2A and we're going to talk about the present tense of AR verbs. Now the big question that I want you to be thinking about as you watch this video and take your own notes is how can I communicate who is doing something using AR verbs? I want you to go ahead and write that question down at the top of your notes, please, and then leave some space so that you can answer it at the end of this lesson. Alright, so the present tense of AR verbs. Now, I want to just tell you guys before we even start, this is a very foundational concept in Spanish. This is something that's called conjugating, and this is when we say who is doing something. And this is what we're going to learn about today. We're going to learn about it in the present tense and with AR verbs only. But in the future, we're also going to practice with other kinds of verbs and other tenses. So I want you to make sure that you really get a good handle on this, okay? So, point 1. You already know that the infinitive forms of Spanish verbs always end in AR, ER, or IR. Now remember, in English, the infinitive would be like to speak would be the infinitive. In Spanish, that would be hablar, just like down here. Okay, it ends in the AR, IR, ER. And for us, that's like when we have the to. Okay, point 2. The largest group of verbs will end in AR. So that's what we're going to start with. Okay, hablar is one of these AR verbs. 3. You will want to use verbs in ways other than the infinitive form, right? We don't want to say, I to speak. We want to say, I speak, or she speaks. To do this, we will drop the AR ending and make some changes. So on the next slide, we're going to talk about how to do that. Okay? We have 2 steps to conjugate verbs. Step 1, okay, to create the forms of most AR verbs, any verbs that aren't irregular or like that don't deviate from the rules, we will first drop the AR from the infinitive and leave ourselves with the stem. So what we have here is if we have hablar, that's to speak, that's the infinitive, and we're just going to erase the AR, and that leaves us with our stem, hablo. Okay? The second thing that we're going to do is we're going to add the verb endings. So you'll remember earlier this chapter, we learned our subject pronouns, right? We had yo, tu, and it's really, really important that you know these well as you start to conjugate. Usted is going to be in this bottom box with él and ella. So we have yo, tu, sorry, that's really little. Él, ella, usted, nosotros, in Spain only. We have vosotros. And then we have ellos, ellas, and ustedes. So I actually want you guys, please, to go ahead and draw this chart on your notes. This is super important. And then we're going to take these verb endings that it talks about here. We're actually going to put them in the chart so you can see which ones they go with. So we have o, as, a, amos, ais, don't forget that accent, and an. So when we're talking about yo or I, we'll use o. When we're talking to you, tu, we'll use as. When we're talking about him or her or talking to somebody formal, we'll use a, etc. Okay, so if we want to say I speak, we're going to say hablo. If we want to say he or she speaks, okay, well, or let's start with you speak. Let's do you speak. So we'll always have our stem. So I'm just going to go ahead and write these in here because we're going to start with the same stem no matter what. So we have hablo. Okay, so if we want to say you speak, tu, we're going to add that as ending, hablas. If we want to say he or she speaks, we'll say habla. We speak, hablamos. Y'all speak in Spain will be habláis. And then they speak, or in any country besides Spain, you guys speak, would be hablan. Okay, I have a neater chart of this on the next page, so make sure you have this chart over here down, and then we're going to copy down the verb in a chart that looks similar. So here you have your forms of hablar, but in one of these tables that we've been working on. And I want you guys to actually go ahead and copy this one down too. This is super good practice. Remember, on this column is singular, and on this column is plural. So we have like one person here or multiple people here. And then we have first person, second person. So we're talking about myself, we're talking about you, or third person. We're talking about him or her, or somebody that's more formal. So we're kind of removing ourselves from that. In Spanish, the present tense form of a verb can be translated into English in two ways. So if we use hablo español, I speak Spanish, it can either mean I speak Spanish or I am speaking Spanish. More like kind of this is what I do, or this immediate right now. Please make sure you have this chart copied down before you go ahead to the next slide. Okay, the last thing that I want to talk about here is that the verb endings indicate who is doing the action. Okay, let's go ahead and highlight that in our notes. The verb, that's not right. The verb endings always indicate who is doing the action. So they tell you who is speaking in these examples here. Because of this, we can often use the verb without a subject. So we know that the O ending is from yo. It can only be yo. So it can only be talking about I. So we don't need to say I speak English, because here it says hablo inglés, and that O can only be speaking about I. So we know it means I speak English. Okay, it's the same thing over here. If we ask hablas español, this can only go with the tú. So we know that we're asking, do you speak Spanish? Okay, however, subject pronouns are often used for emphasis or clarification. I want you to go ahead and write that one down too. In this sentence that follows here, habla can mean he or she or you formal. So what they've done is that they've gone ahead and put the subject pronouns here to tell us who they're talking about. So they're saying she speaks English, but he speaks Spanish. And because habla can be used in multiple ways, those subject pronouns are just there to clarify for us. So the question that we went into this video asking was, how can I communicate who is doing something using AR verbs? And what we learned to do is we learned to conjugate. Okay, so your first answer is conjugate. And then I just want for you to write down these two steps. Find the stem. Okay, and to do that, you're going to remove the AR and then add the appropriate ending. And what I'm going to ask you to do here, I know you already have this chart, but I just want you to copy it down here one more time, both for your own reference as you answer this question about this lesson, but also because it's really, really good practice. Thanks for watching today, guys. As always, if you would please go ahead and write down any questions that you have at the bottom of your notes so that you can remember to ask me when you come back to Spanish class. Like I said, this is a super foundational idea, so I really want to make sure that we get it. Okay, thanks for watching, and have a wonderful day.